We've addressed our pre-match physical preparation. Now we need to address the post-match, the recovery aspect of what we do. In our first 3 years here at Atlanta United, we've come into some pretty dense fixture periods. That increases the importance of our recovery after matches. Very much like our pre-match routines, we would like our players to be empowered and enabled to individualize their post-match routines. We have two groups of players that come out of matches, the players that play significant minutes and those that don't. Let's first address the players that play. Once they get back into the locker room, there's a cool down time period where you leave a player to themselves. That's when they can grab a bottle of water, that's when they grab a Powerade to replenish those carbohydrates that they've lost, that's when they can go address any knock that they may have taken up with the medical staff. We want to allow them that time to be free. Once that comes in, then we collectively come together as a group. That's when we'll address the match, we'll have their information, and then after the completion of that meeting as a team, that's when the real recovery process takes place. Once we begin the recovery process, we look to enable our players to take part in ice baths, contrast baths. Go ahead and start eating. We always have a meal prepared for our players and ready to go as soon as the final whistle blows and they re-enter the locker room. That meal is going to be heavy on the carbohydrates and heavy on the protein to help promote the replenishment of energy that they've lost during the match, as well as the protein to help repair the muscle and the damage that they have done running around for 90 minutes. This is where players begin to differ. Some players don't want to eat immediately. They're still going to process all the information that they took on during the match. They're going to speak to coaching staff. They're going to speak to their teammates. We want to allow that. Now let's go back and speak about the contrast and the ice baths. The contrast and the ice baths are two ways that we can help slow the body down, impart that parasympathetic response onto the system. Some players, they'll differ here. With the ice bath, they just submerge solely in cold water. They'll take their time of 8 to 12 minutes, and then they'll exit out of it. And we always try and encourage them to warm up naturally, so the body naturally gets to increase the blood flow to the area that was submerged. And this helps get some of the negative byproduct that they may have accumulated during the match out of that area and into other parts of the body so it can be processed. With the contrast bath, that's when players will alternate between cold and hot submersion. This is going to hopefully, theoretically, increase the magnitude of the response of the body flushing out that negative byproduct in the system. But ultimately, we're never going to tell a player that they need to demand to take part in one or the other modality, because other players will not want to enter into those ice baths at all. They'll go directly to our medical staff, they'll look for a massage, they'll look for a flush of the lower extremities, and then that's how they'll take care of trying to process all that negative byproduct that they've accumulated. Outside of the nutrition and outside of those quick and easy recovery modalities that we have accessible to them in the locker room, we really want to encourage them to get back to their own homes. We want to encourage them to get to sleep, because when they sleep, that's when the body slows down all of the processes, and the body's able to focus on all the recovery that's going to be needed from the damage that they've done during the match. And then based off of when our next match is, that's when we'll call them in the following day into the training ground at a very specific time that we can always make sure that we're optimizing that sleep. For example, when we kick off at 7 p.m. at Mercedes-Benz and we end up finishing around 11 p.m., we know that our players aren't going to get home until around midnight. There's no reason for us to call them into training the next day at 9 a.m. because we know that we'll be shortening those sleep cycles because of how long it takes players to come down off of playing a match. We'll always be able to push training back a couple of hours to make sure that we're giving our players optimal amounts of time to sleep and to enhance that recovery as much as possible. Another critical topic to what we do here at Atlanta United is monitoring our players on a daily basis and from match to match. On a daily basis, our players will wear heart rate monitors and GPS tracking systems. The GPS tracking system is in that infamous man vest that you've seen some of our players wear when they take off their jerseys in games. With the physical demands of each position being so unique, we need to make sure that we're preparing our players to match our playing style as a club. So when we talk about how many sprints a player will cover within a single training session, we know that that's going to differ from position to position. So how we're tracking those things on a daily and weekly basis, we will make sure that we're getting our players into match day in an optimal physical form. We also use our heart rate monitoring systems. Each player for a training session will wear a heart rate strap just around the base of their chest. That strap's going to track our internal stimulus. So we have our GPS to track our external stimulus, and we have the heart rate monitoring strap to track our internal stimulus. When we compare the two, we're able to see how efficiently our players' bodies are processing the work that they're able to complete from an external perspective. For example, if we have two players that both cover 3 miles in a training session, but player A covers that distance with over 20 minutes in his highest heart rate zones, but player B covers that same distance at a much lower heart rate, then we feel confident with the recovery process and the time that we'll need with player B when we compare to player A. Player A, internally, his body had to work much harder during that training session. Therefore, following that training session with that information that we're able to collect, we'll focus on that recovery process with player A much more before we bring them back onto the field to train again with us. We also take subjective information, such as how hard did a player feel that they trained. On a scale of 1 to 10, we'll ask a player, how difficult was training today? Based on that response from the player, we're able to gauge the physical work that they completed, the internal stimulus objectively of how their body performed that day, and then subjectively how the player saw training. With those three variables combined, we feel that we're able to paint a very complete picture of what process from a recovery standpoint, from a nutritional standpoint, we need to prescribe or recommend our players to make sure that they're staying on the field as much as possible, increasing their availability for selection for our manager, and thereby making us more successful on a match-to-match basis. I want to thank you guys for watching today, and I look forward to seeing any comments or perspectives that you all have to offer so that we can continue to add on to this training series for you all.